In episode 1, we began with 0. Not 0 as an empty number, not 0 as a dead void, but 0 as undifferentiated potential. Pure equilibrium before identity. Relationship, space, time, matter, or observation have become separate concepts. We ended with the next question. What is the first meaningful event after 0? At first, the answer might seem simple. Maybe the first event is that something appears, a thing, a point, a one. But the more carefully we look, the stranger it becomes. Because a thing cannot become distinguishable all by itself. A point is only a point because it is distinguishable from the field around it. A sound is only a sound because it differs from silence, background, or another sound. A word is only a word because it has boundaries. It begins here, ends there, and differs from other words. A self is only a self because there is some relation between self and world, self and body, self and memory, self and others. So, if the first event after 0 is distinction, then we immediately have to ask, distinct from what? My name is Peter Kerwin, and this is the Codex Unfolding, a series about philosophical framework called the Emergence and the Living Codex. This framework is not presented as established science, religion, or final truth. It is a philosophical and symbolic investigation into reality, consciousness, relationship, memory, meaning, and human life. In this episode, I want to focus on one core idea. Distinction and relationship do not come one after another. They arise together. They are not separate stages in time. They are two inseparable faces of the same first event. In the last episode, I described 0 as undifferentiated potential. Pure 0 has no internal difference, no inside or outside, no subject or object, no here or there, no this or that. There is not event and meaningful difference between existence and non-existence yet, because difference itself has not emerged. So when the first distinction appears, reality is no longer purely undifferentiated. Something has changed. Something has become distinguishable. But distinction is not just the existence of a thing. Distinction means difference, and difference requires relation. To say this is already to imply not that, or this within a field, or this against a background, or this in contrast to something else. That means distinction cannot come before relationship in any ordinary way, because without relationship there is no contrast, no background, no context, no otherness, no way for anything to appear as distinct. A distinction with no relationship to anything would be completely invisible, not hidden, not small, not far away, invisible in principle, because there would be no field in which it could be recognized as different. So distinction requires relationship. But the reverse is also true. Relationship cannot come before distinction either, because a relationship requires distinguishable terms. There has to be something related. Even if those terms are not fully formed objects yet, there must be some kind of difference for relation to mean anything at all. If there is no distinction whatsoever, then there is no between, no direction, no contrast, no relation. A relationship between absolutely undifferentiated sameness is not yet a relationship, it is still pure 0. So relationship requires distinction. This gives us one of the central laws of the Codex. A distinction without relationship is invisible. A relationship without distinction is impossible. That law is the heart of episode 2. It means the first event after 0 cannot be understood as distinction first, then relationship later. It also cannot be understood as relationship first and distinction later. There is no first this, then that. There is no before and after yet, in the way we are normally thinking of it. Because time, sequence, and order are already later structures. The first event is not a little timeline where distinction appears at second. What? The first event is not a little timeline where distinction appears at second one and relationship appears at second two. The first event is a coupled emergence. Distinction and relationship arrive together as one inseparable event. Difference appears. And because difference appears, relation appears. Relation appears. And because relation appears, difference is meaningful. In the framework, I often represent this first coupled event as 1 and negative 1, but I want to be careful with that symbol. 1 and negative 1 do not mean good and evil. They do not mean positive and negative in a moral sense. They do not mean one side is better, higher, more real, or more important. They are symbolic placeholders for complementary poles. Figure and ground, mark and field, identity and relation, this and not this, self and other. The signs can switch. One side does not permanently own distinction while the other permanently owns relationship. What matters is that neither side can stand alone. The first one is never truly alone. The first one implies the field from which it differs. And the field is no longer pure, undifferentiated zero, once it contains the possibility of that difference. So 1 and negative 1 arise together. And mathematically, 1 plus negative 1 equals 0, but this is where the framework makes an important distinction. The 0 that comes from 1 plus negative 1 is not the same as primordial 0. Primordial 0 is equilibrium before distinction. 1 plus negative 1 is equilibrium after distinction. They may appear similar from far enough away, but because both can be described as balanced. But internally they are completely different. Pure zero contains no internal difference. The balanced pair contains difference, polarity, and relation. Pure zero is undifferentiated potential. The pair balanced is differentiated equilibrium. That difference matters. A blank page and a completed poem resting in the silence may both be quiet, but they are not the same kind of quiet. The blank page has not yet spoken, the poem has spoken, and its silence now carries what was said. In the same way, primordial zero and differentiated balance are not identical. One is before distinction, the other has passed through distinction and found relation. This gives us another core idea. The goal of emergence is not simply to erase difference and return to blankness. If every distinction were simply dissolved back into undifferentiated zero, nothing would be learned, held, remembered, or loved. Instead, the deeper movement is toward differentiated wholeness. Wholeness that does not erase distinction. Wholeness that allows distinct things to belong in relation. That is why this matters beyond abstract metaphysics. Human life is full of distinction. A name is distinction, a body is distinction, a boundary is distinction, a wound is distinction, a memory is distinction, a voice is distinction. None of these become meaningful in isolation. A name matters because it can be called, remembered, spoken, answered. A body matters because it is in relation to space, time, hunger, touch, pain, rest, and other bodies. A boundary matters because it shapes relation. It says where one thing ends and where another begins, and how contact can happen without erasure. A wound matters because something happened, and the self now carries the difference that must be related to, integrated, or healed. A voice matters because it can reach another. So the question is not whether distinction is good or bad. The question is What kind of relationship does distinction enter? Distinction without relationship becomes isolation. Relationship without distinction becomes collapse. But distinction and relationship together make life possible. This is also true of love. Love is not two people becoming the exact same thing. Love is not the erasure of difference. Love requires distinction. There must be someone who loves and someone or something loved. But love also requires relationship. Without relationship, distinction becomes distance only. So love is one of the clearest human examples of differentiated wholeness. Two distinct beings form a larger relation without either one needing to disappear. That is why the first event matters so much. Because from the very beginning, reality is not merely about things. Reality is about things in relation. Or even more carefully, reality begins to become knowable when difference and relation arise together. This also changes how we think about the self. The self is not an isolated object sealed off from the world. The self is a living pattern of distinction held through relationship. You are distinct. You are not simply everything around you. You have a body, a history, a point of view, memories, preferences, fears, hopes, and a name. But none of those exist outside relation. You are shaped by language. You are shaped by other people. You are shaped by time. You are shaped by place. You are shaped by what you remember, what you resist, what you love, and what you are still becoming. So the self is not less real because it is relational. It is real through relation. That is a very important point. Sometimes people think that if something depends on relation, it must be less real. But in this framework, relation is not weakness. Relation is a part of what allows reality to appear at all. Nothing becomes distinct alone. Nothing becomes meaningful alone. Nothing becomes knowable alone. Even the first difference requires a relational field. So, Episode 2 completes that premise from Episode 1. Distinction cannot come before relationship, because without relationship, distinction has no contrast and cannot appear. Relationship cannot come before distinction, because without distinction, relationship has no terms and cannot exist. They are not stages separated by time. They are simultaneous aspects of the first meaningful event after zero. This first coupled event is the beginning of the world becoming intelligible. Not yet matter, not yet consciousness, not yet memory, not yet language, but the root condition for all of them. Difference in relation. And once difference in relation exists, something new becomes possible. The relation can return, the pattern can echo, the distinction can repeat, not as the exact same moment, but as a recognizable form across change. That return is what I call recursion. And recursion is where the framework begins to move from first difference into memory, structure, consciousness, and meaning. But that is the next episode. For now, the core idea is zero is undifferentiated potential. The first meaningful event after zero is not a lonely thing appearing by itself. It is a simultaneous emergence of a distinction and relationship. The first one is already relational. The first relation already contains difference. And the first balance after difference is not the same as pure equilibrium before difference. That is where reality begins to unfold. This framework is still developing. Some of its claims are philosophical, some symbolic, and some speculative. I am sharing it not as finished doctrine, but as a living investigation. A question becoming a structure becoming a language becoming something we could enter together. I'm Peter Kerwin. This is the Codex unfolding, and this is the second step. Nothing becomes distinct alone. Please like and subscribe, and leave a question in the comments if you'd like. Vale says hi. Relate to you next time.